According to the New York Times, a new intelligence report reviewed by U.S. officials asserts that a pro-Ukrainian group was behind last year's attacks on the Nord Stream pipeline. U.S. government officials say there are no links showing Ukrainian President Zelensky or his government had anything to do with the act, but declined to offer any further information on the intelligence.
Meanwhile, Zelensky has vowed to send more troops to the eastern city of Bakhmut in what has become the bloodiest battle in the war with Russia. This just days after reports suggested Kiev is likely withdrawing from the battle.
Zelensky's announcement comes after President Biden approved another $400 million in aid to Ukraine. The unfaltering spending to the war-torn country has caused lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to begin to question the funding packages, according to the New York Times. So this story about Nord Stream in the New York Times is about intelligence report. So it sounds like officials, U.S. National security officials, are summarizing this intelligence for the New York Times. Very interesting. So it does not say that Russia did this. Now, to be clear, it doesn't say the U.S. did it. It said, or Zelensky, it says a pro-Ukrainian entity.
But not Ukraine.
What is the pro-Ukrainian entity that's not Ukraine?
And not the United States of America. Yeah, look, I'm not accusing anybody of simply printing U.S. intelligence reports that are false because it exonerates the U.S. and Zelensky of responsibility for an attack on a pipeline that would be a violation of international law. However, we definitely know that there is a pattern that exists of media printing U.S. intelligence reports the way they print police reports uncritically, and the complete and total deficit of information here, I think, is revealing.
I would like to see this intelligence report myself. Why is this not something the American people can view?
Right. So here's just one paragraph that shows you the kind of void that this article really is. It says, U.S. officials said there was much they didn't know about the perpetrators or their affiliations. The review of newly collected intelligence suggests they were opponents of Vladimir Putin of Russia, but does not specify the members of the group or who directed or paid for the operation. U.S. officials declined to disclose the nature of the intelligence or how it was obtained or any details of the strength of the evidence it contains. They have said there are no firm conclusions about it, leaving open the possibility that the operation might have been conducted off the books by a proxy force. So what this does is basically have an article that says, just in case you're wondering, we don't know anything about anything, but it wasn't us and it wasn't Zelensky.
But this is a little bit, I mean, I agree with you, but it represents a slight shift because they're not saying Russia did it.
Well, they haven't been saying Russia did it. There was a report, I think, on the Washington Post at the end of last year where there was just no intelligence there for
U.S.
Russia's
officials
involvement.
have been saying Russia did it.
U.S. officials, but the media has been off of that for a long time. Even the corporate media has come out with reports that I think it was because the
well, but this is U.S. officials now saying in an intelligence report being summarized by the New York Times, but the intelligence people are not saying Russia did it. I found that remarkable.
Well, I think the reason is, ever since we got the report last year from whatever it was, the combination of Norway and Sweden and Germany or whoever it was that was doing the investigation, they very quickly cleared Russia of responsibility. So there was absolutely no evidence that Russia could be involved. So since that point, unless you're willing to contradict allies and have some proof with which to contradict allies, I think it put the U.S. in a very difficult position. And the narrative of Russia having involvement has been substantively dead for a while, but that leaves a void, right? That leaves okay, then who did it void? Because as the Seymour Hersh reporting details, it takes an enormous amount of technical capacity to be able to carry something out like this at the deep sea depths. There's only so many divers that are trained for this kind of operation. There's only so many ships that can gain access to this heavily patrolled NATO area of the occupied area of the ocean, of the sea. So this seems to be, one might argue that this is an effort to provide a placeholder where that void of Russia didn't do it exists, which is to say that there could be some terrorist group, some third party unaffiliated with another country. Because again, this is important. Because once it's affiliated with the country, once Zelensky's responsible, once the United States is responsible, there are implications for international law.
Zelensky, I believe, has said Russia is responsible.
Well,
but so now. Well, no, I know. But they're saying U.S. intelligence officials are contradicting what Zelensky has said, and contradicting what our own officials used to say. I mean, you're right that the media has maybe moved, even the corporate media catching up to it. But I think this is a little bit like the lab leak animal spillover debate, where like the side that the dissidents or the contrarians or the people not well respected have been saying, we're not allowed to talk about it. You don't think there's any likelihood to this? Is gradually winning over time.
Well, look, you can see.
And I actually see this piece as, even though it's flawed and not, I don't think, correct
That's
about
funny.
many
I see it as fully insulating. It's telling people, no matter what ambiguity exists out there, America definitely didn't do it. And Zelensky definitely didn't do it, which to me represents not a kind of movement to more inquiry and openness. It's, if you're going to use the lab leak analogy, it's as if instead of saying, we know it's zoonotic, they say it might not be zoonotic, but it's absolutely not lab leak. You know, it's absolutely not the one that would be negatively implicate America or our funding practices in these labs or whatever negatively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a good intelligence report or even correct, but I find it interesting that the U.S. intelligence officials are no longer actually blaming Russia, which to me opens the door to eventually learn something else about who might have been responsible. I
mean, part of what was so fascinating.
But if we could actually read the report, we'd know. We're relying on the New York Times.
Well, remember, the whole point of that UN hearing that we covered a week or two ago, at which Jeffrey Sachs gave remarks in addition to former CIA official Ray McGovern about why they believe the Seymour Hersh report is accurate, was that they were there to testify in favor of a UN independent committee to do an independent investigation. And the reason why Russia is invested in this is because the results of the investigation, or the investigation itself, they're being barred from participating from, that's being carried out by a number of NATO countries. And whatever you think about Russia, no one's really arguing that they're involved. And it seems obvious why they would have an investment in figuring out who actually did it, given how much blame came their way and how, to your point, Robby, the U.S. officials have been wanting to finger them with this the whole time, and only basically stopped because they can't. There's no evidence for it. So why would Russia trust a report by a bunch of NATO allies who have every incentive to either not find the real solution, if not cast it in a negative light? And that's, I would argue, exactly what the UN is there for, to conduct these kind of investigations. But there was no appetite from it from the United States, France, or any of the other NATO countries that were on that panel. A lot of the other global South countries were kind of more neutral on it, made critical statements about what this did to the environment, how it was a horrible environmental impact, and that people should care about it. But it is interesting to me that the U.S. media, that there's an openness to the UN conducting an independent investigation.
Yeah.
Why?
It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
But I thought this was interesting. Well, we'll continue to follow for sure any developments on the Nord Stream front, and we will have more Rising right after this.